Hello, everybody. Thank you very much for attending this session. From this point onward, I will be talking about the payment platform microservice evolution that supports Merpay's post-payment and smart money. Let me just briefly introduce myself first. My name is Cui Peichong. Internally, I use my Slack name, Pedro. I joined as a backend engineer in April of 2019 to Merpay, and right now I work for the credit design team and involved in the development of Merpay post-payment and Merpay Smart Money invoicing and payment. This is the agenda for this session. First of all, I will be introducing you to the current microservice configuration in the current payment platform. And then I will be talking about the background to the introduction of the invoice microservice that offers the functions on the payment platform, and also talk about the technical deficits that came out related to the implementation. And at the end, I will be talking about the independent invoice microservice that would solve that deficit. And so first of all, I would like to explain about the repayment platform current status. Right now, there are two services that offers a repayment function to the customers. One is Merpay's deferred payment, post-payment. Merpay's postpaid is a service that allows the customers to pay the amount of the purchases that made on Mercari on the following month. And in this service, this offers three repayment process. One is automatic withdrawing from the bank. And this is a method where the payment is deducted automatically from the bank that is connected. And in addition to that, there are other ways of paying using Merpay Balance and also repaying through the ATM at the convenience store. And the other service that offers the repayment function is the Merpay Smart Money. Merpay Smart Money is a service that allows the users to borrow money from Mercari app. Merpay Smart Money, the repayment every month can be done by automatic deduction from the bank account that is connected, or it could be repaid anytime from the balance. In the background of this service, there is this microservice in the structure. Like you see here, the lending microservice is offering the functions to calculate the invoice amount and also managing the contracts. And also, a deferred pay microservice offers a calculation on the embedded amount and also a function to manage the contract amount. And as I mentioned earlier, there are many commonalities for the repayment functions between Smart Money and post-payment. And the invoice microservice will be addressing those repayment functions that are used for both of these services. And in order to realize this repayment function, invoice microservice is interacting with several common foundations of Merpay, and mainly with the bank microservice that mainly manages the bank connection and charges. This will be used for charge, and through the payment microservice that manages the overall payment, it adds the repayment of the debts to the payment service that manages the post-payment debts. That was the overall structure of the current microservice, but initially, invoice microservice did not exist. And so I would now like to explain the background of introducing the invoice microservice. Merpay Smart Money was a service that was released after the post-payment. And so before the release, post-payment was the only service that required to provide the repayment function. And so there was no need to develop a microservice for repayment function only. And so deferred pay and microservicing were all providing all the functions that are related to deferred payment. Of course, deferred pay was interacting with the microservices directly in order to realize this repayment function. And in the status, the Merpay Smart Money development project started, and within that, several requirements came out. First of all, as the basic requirement, users are able to borrow money in Mercari app and also be able to repay on the Mercari app. Those were the requirements, but there are several challenges related to the repayment function. First of all, if it was executed on the same day as the auto deduction for postpay, you need to consider the API capacity control for the banks. If possible, we would like to request the charges altogether to the banks. And also, if the invoice is delinquent, when we want to automatically allocate from the Merpay balance or the revenue, we need to control the priority against the invoice of the deferred payment. And based on those requirements, we came up and considered several microservice configuration. Our first idea was to develop a microservice called lending, and to realize all the functions related to smart money repayment. As you can see, the benefit of this idea is that because the lending microservice is independent, all the functions can be designed and developed independently. But there are several disadvantages as well. First of all, the lending microservice and deferred pay microservice are separated, and because of that, each services will provide a repayment function. However, it will become difficult to control the capacity to the bank API. And the post-pay invoice and the smart money invoice priority control will be also difficult. And although the post-pay repayment function already existed, we needed to deploy a similar function to the lending microservice as well. The second idea that we considered was that an independent repayment microservice is to be developed. To be more specific, the lending microservice will only offer the smart money invoice and contract management function only, and independent repayment microservice called invoice will be developed. And initially, this will manage the repayment of smart money, but in the future, the repayment for postpay will also be integrated. And this idea is a little bit different to the most ideal microservice, but there are some disadvantages too. First of all, before being able to migrate the repayment function of postpay, as with idea 1, it will be difficult to control the API capacity to the banks. And also, the control of the priority will also be difficult. And also, because the repayment function is going to be deployed on the invoice microservice, this will be overlapping deployment with deferred pay and microservice. In the future, we would have to consider the postpay function migration in the future. And the third idea is to use the repayment function of postpay. A lending microservice offers the function for smart money usage and also contract management, but also deferred pay microservice will also address the smart money repayment in addition to the other debts as well. To be more specific, deferred pay microservice repayment function will be extended and made it into invoice microservice so that it would respond to both repayment for postpay as well as smart money.
The advantage of this proposal is that the repayment function can be centralized, eliminating an API capacity control to the bank and the problem of controlling the order of the allocation as in proposal 1 and 2. Also, since it is an extension of the existing repayment function for postpay or deferred pay, there will be less duplicate of the implementations. And of course, as you can see, there's a disadvantage in the actual configuration from the microservice responsibilities. Originally, the deferred pay microservice should have provided only deferred pay functions for the postpay functions. However, now it is complicated by the fact that also supports smart money repayments. Finally, taking into account the release schedule and the difficulty of the implementation, we decided to implement Proposal 3 with a temporary technical debt at the time of the initial release, and then independently implement the invoice microservice in a divided microservice. First, in order to implement this proposal, we needed to work on repayment-related data model in the deferred pay microservice as well as extension. Invoice data model as an example. First, we need to distinguish between the deferred pay domain-specific items and abstracted invoice items handled by invoice microservice. For example, some papers contract ID is a specialized item for the deferred payment domain. And the items such as amount, settlement amount, and date of billing or month are the abstracted invoice items as an invoice microservice. Now, not only that, we need to add several items to be able to support smart money. For example, we added service ID to be able to identify which service it is. After we organized and expanded the data model, the existing repayment logic was also expanded to support smart money. We then created a new invoice GPRC service, separating it from the existing interface with a view to the future independence of the invoice microservices. With this idea, we'll be able to successfully released the Merpay Smart Money service. I was prepared for the differences in technology, or I thought that there is going to be the technical depth. However, when we entered the actual phase of the operation, I was be able to feel it more. First, there is an impact of the mixed code base. For example, when we develop the function for deferred payment service, we have to be aware of the impact on the invoice microservice. Conversely, when developing a new repayment the function, we need to be aware of the impact on deferred payment service. In addition to that code base, there is also an impact of having a single database. When an incident occurs during the operation of the deferred payment service, it is necessary to investigate the data. At that time, maintenance cost will increase because smart money data must be excluded. The complexity of data analysis goes up as well as the operation of the deferred service. To solve this technical depth, a project has been initiated to isolate invoice microservice. First, create an independent invoice microservice. The data model of the independent invoice microservice is abstracted from the repayment-related data model and the deferred pay microservice as described above. It will then provide a gRPC service with the exact same interface as the invoice gRPC service in the deferred pay microservice. By providing the same existing interface, we will be able to easily migrate on a customer basis. Specifically, the migration status is managed for each customer. And if the customer has already migrated, then request near the invoice gRPC in deferred pay microservice is proxied directly to the invoice microservice without processing. In this way, microservice as a client can migrate without any modification. The migration patch looks like this. A migration patch and the deferred pay microservice extract repayment-related data per customer, because migration specific gRPC endpoint in the invoice microservice and stores the data in the microservice database. The actual migration progress went something like this. In the initial stage, we're very careful to keep the pace of the migration. Merpay deferred pay is a service with a long history, so there are inevitably some irregularity in the data that we do not anticipate. As a proportion of the migration increased, we repeated the process of detecting and recovering the irregular data or modifying that irregular data or collecting that irregular data. As soon as a stable operation of the system was confirmed, the pace of the migration was increased and was completed. After the migration of all customers is completed in this way, the current lending microservice and deferred pay microservice can be directed to the invoice service, which can then be changed to the new invoice microservice. Lastly, this is a summary. Looking back, in microservice development, it is sometimes difficult to create an ideal architecture at the very beginning. But in some cases, I think it is a good professional approach to seek an ideal architecture based on the plan to eliminate technical debt by making microservice configuration decisions with an awareness of the technical debt. In terms of the migration, we have made it possible to perform migration step by step, which has made migration safe and effective. I hope you can join us as we have discussed the introduction and independence of the invoice microservice, and I hope that you will be able to learn from this. And with this, I would like to conclude the session. Thank you very much for your attention.